I was just telling Tim that when people are selling their house, they always say to me, people do this and people do that, and people do this. And I think people are going to do that. And I always think to myself in my mind, I don't say it out loud, of course, like, how many houses have you sold? And it's usually like two. And people have this created idea in their mind about the reality of things. And some people are very adamant about this whole picture that they've painted. I've had people tell me stories about, well, the appraiser, what they do is they come in and they only look at this and they don't look at that. And I'm just thinking to myself, where do you get that from? And I don't know, Tim, how do people come up with these like very detailed concepts of reality that aren't based in reality? What is that?
So I think you nailed it right there, Brian. I think it's perspective, right? I mean, let's call it what it is. It's
Okay.
perspective, and the perspective is based on, you ready? What they watch on YouTube and Google. Let's face it, they hit this TikTok, and TikTok says, well, people say you should do this. But you and I both know, you're selling 30, 40, 50, 60 houses in a year, right? Your perspective is a lot different than this homeowner who has sold one or two houses in their lifetime. So they're struggling to understand the marketplace. They're jumping in. They're saying, what do I need to do to make it happen? But let's face it, Brian, the market's shifted. The market's changed, hasn't it?
It has. And the thing that when I help somebody sell their house, I immediately go into a educational mode where I'm sort of like, all right, let's start with this is what statistically there's 8% chance of this and 11% chance of this. And this is how many showings you should expect. This is how many days on the market that if you get past this point, you're too far. And, we kind of attack it from that perspective. But, people have this very like detailed perception of the way buyers buy houses, or that, someone is going to come in here and they're going to think this and they're going to think that. And some people are very open to be directed. They're like, okay, I have no idea. You tell me what to do. And then they look at me like, why would you even ask me that question? And some people, they have it all figured out before I get there. It's just fascinating. So, Tim, let's talk a little bit about like house prices.
Sure.
And the difference in the way that these interest rates, inflation, and all these other factors have affected house prices. And I guess I just want to give you an example. So I have $1 million listing right now, and I'm talking to the homeowner, and she says, well, most of these people have lived here for 10 or 15 years. And when they bought the houses, they were like, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, and the interest rates were 2% and 3% or 3% and 4%. So when you're now faced with like a mortgage at maybe 3.5% at 500,000, and now $1 million mortgage at 6.5%. What would be the difference in the payment? And the other thing that I'll say is that the type of buyer that bought a $400,000 house is a very typical, 2-income family in the Washington D.C. area. They both make 150,000 or whatever, 120, or one makes 80, one makes 150, whatever. And It's very easy to afford something like that. But now that rates are higher, I feel like the step is so much higher. Whereas a $300,000 house or a $400,000 house that was maybe 300 a couple years ago, and the interest rates were 3 and now they're 4, that is also much higher, but I think relatively speaking, much less of an impact, because I think that people's incomes haven't gone up so drastically. And I think the difference between maybe you have maybe your payment went up 30% and went from 2,000 to 3,000. It's like, wow, that's a lot, but that's $1,000 a month. Now, when you're going from 2,500 to 6,500, that's mind blowing. So can you help bring some perspective to these numbers a little bit? You're the numbers guy, Tim. So
I think you drilled it right there, Brian. You said two things have occurred. Number one, you had somebody who bought the house 10 or 15 years ago. They were 2-family income, and they're looking around saying, well, another 2-family income of my same caliber is going to buy my house.
Right.
And what they don't understand is, yes, their income has gone up, but the price of the house has skyrocketed, as has the interest rates. So you've got the trifactor, if you will. You've got, yes, your income is going up somewhat, but with the price of houses and with the interest rates going up, I mean, people are saying they're up, especially the higher end, the payment doubling. You know, I mean, it's massive.
And
I
the
mean,
payment doubling on $2,000 is a lot different than a $4,000 or $5,000 mortgage doubling.
It's massive. It really is. So you went from a 3% rate to a 6% rate. Right there, that's a factor of 2. Then you've gone from a value of $400,000 now to a value of $1 million, and they're walking out thinking, okay, I'm in the house in the neighborhood that I bought 10 or 15 years ago. No, they're in a totally different market. And let's face it, the number of people buying in that marketplace is compressed, right? It's quite a bit less.
Absolutely. And that's where what I've seen, people are throwing these numbers out around the housing market. And when they throw those numbers out, that's like a national statistic. That goes from, a $15,000 mobile home all the way up to a $50 million house. And they mush all those numbers together.
Sure.
I'd like to maybe just segment it out just a little bit. And let's just start with this idea, because I'd like to do this exercise. Let's take a $300,000 house that has appreciated 50%.
Okay.
And then a house that was like now $1 million, or a $600,000 house that appreciated 50%. So that's 300,000 appreciated 50% and 600,000 appreciated 50%, which is what the past like 7 or 8 years we've seen about a 50% increase, probably less than that.
The last 3 years. I mean, think about it. I mean, from 19 to 23, I mean, we saw massive appreciation. 50%.
Okay, so let's do the math on that. 300,000, Tim, and 600,000, and let's use the math of 3.5% to 6.5%. So a 3.5%, $300,000 loan. I'm putting Tim on the spot here. Look at him; he's like typing away.
Yeah, it's crazy. And remember, this is just general, right? We're not nailing any specific.
I didn't ask Tim to get ready for this by giving all these numbers. We're doing it live. All right, so this is like a little sideshow here.
So a $300,000 house. Let's just round it off.
3.5%.
So
let's just go, Tim, if you don't mind. Let's go VA so that we're using like 100% of the 3%. Let's do VA, disabled veteran, no funding fee, just straight up. Like if you borrowed $300,000 at 3.5%, then you borrowed $300,000. No,
$450,000.
$450,000 at 6.5%.
Yeah. So
we're going to borrow 600,000, and then be $900,000.
$900,000. Okay, so let's
work with
the numbers down. And so, guys, we're going to use generics. Don't hold me to the APR, because I'm just kind of do some basics, because we don't know a lot of the factors of the loan itself. But so let's look at when rates were back in 2021. A $300,000 house. Honestly, your payment was about $1,800, Brian. I mean, that's just across the board. Principal and interest, taxes, insurance, VA loan, etc. So we're looking at about $1,800. Now we've gone to $450. Okay. And then we're looking at rates into the 6s now, right? I mean, let's just kind of call it what it is. Now your payment ready has doubled.
3,600.
Yeah. And that's going from like a 3% rate to about it's roughly 6% rate. So remember that rate is doubled, right? And then the value is going up, 50%. Brian, that's massive. And so from your perspective, remember, if you were in a $300,000 house, your perspective is, hey, this is my starter home, and now I'm going to sell it to another couple for a starter home. Yeah, not so much, right? It's going up dramatically. And your income hasn't gone up as high either, right?
But let's make one little point.
Yeah.
All right. The payment went up how much?
Doubled. 100%.
I know, but how much in dollars?
Went up $1,800.
Okay, $1,800. You're saying it like $1,800. I'm saying your income probably went up some portion of that, and $1,800 if you're a double income in the Washington D.C. area. You're making over $10,000-$15,000 a month. It is a lot of money, but it is not blow up the like house poor. That's what the term everybody uses.
So let's change your perspective, Brian. Right, your income went up over the last 4 years about 30%.
Yeah.
Given inflation, given adjustments, given demand. So 30%, look at it from that perspective. Your payment went up 100%.
It did, but if your income was 100,000, now you make 130,000.
Right.
30,000 divided over 12 months.
$2,500. Yep.
Now you're still ahead. But let's do the same thing with the $1 million house now. Let's take the 600,000 and 900. And that's where I feel like people need to recognize this is where it gets real, because there's plenty of people that can afford a $900,000 house a couple years ago. And it's a different situation. Even we won't even talk about that one, but let's talk about the $600,000 house. You bought it in 2017 and now you want to sell it for 900.
So look at that perspective, Brian. So again, your payment $600,000, crazy as it seems, was about a $3,600 payment.
$3,600. What is it now?
So that $900,000 house is a payment of about $7,200.
$7,000. Now this is where I feel like this is what people need to understand. A $900,000 house, 100% financed, is over $7,000 a month.
Right.
I feel like that number is what people would think people live in mansions would be paying. Like, you got $1 million house, you're paying $10,000 a month, and it's 900,000. And what's also crazy is what you look around the area and what you get for 900,000 is not a double staircase with a marble entrance and a water fountain in your circle driveway. You don't get that.
Correct.
For $7,000 a month. You do not park your Ferrari in front of your house like you're parking your Nissan. It's just for 900,000, you're getting like a 5,000-6,000 square foot house in a nice neighborhood in the Washington D.C. area. There's not going to be anything in there that's it's not going to be anything luxury. It is luxury. I mean, granted, come on, we're talking about a $900,000 house, but it is not what you would think of when you would think a waterfront house with a sailboat in front of it.
Correct.
You know, that's the perspective has gone so far. So now it's $7,000 a month, and to afford $7,000 a month, Tim,
I mean, think about
help out a little bit, right? So we're talking about the recommended mortgage, just not even the one you're allowed to give, but recommended is about what, 20 to 25% of your gross.
I mean, let's be more realistic, Brian. Let's just call it what it is. Average American spending almost 35% of their income towards housing, right?
Okay. So if that's $7,200 a month, what does their income need to be?
About $240,000.
$250,000.
Yep, exactly right. Yep.
And that's still not crazy, but no. I also know that if you make $250,000, which a lot of people around here do, 2 people in the house make over 100, that would be crazy to think you're going to pay $7,000 a month mortgage.
It is. It's mind-boggling. And then you nailed it. You roll it back, Brian. How many people are in that category that are going to buy that priced home or are motivated to spend that kind of money in today's marketplace? Right.
Right.
So I think what you're drilling it down to basically, once you circle back, is perspective. It all comes down to your perspective of where you were, where you're going. Even though you think your house is worth a certain amount, you've got to take into perspective where the payment has gone, Brian.
Yeah.
In comparison to your income and all the other factors involved. So, you nailed it right there, man.
So the high end of the market is definitely feeling the impact more than the middle and the lower end of the market. So anything like 600,000 and under, I think, is still pretty much game. But once you get over there and you start talking about these mortgages, like I had a client just bought a house, $4,000 mortgage, and they're just like, that's a $4,000 mortgage. Like, they're really like having to readjust their mind around the idea of $4,000 a month every single month coming in, going out to pay this mortgage. So, Tim, I appreciate it, man. That was great. You pulled all those numbers right on the fly. I did not tell Tim I was going to make him do this, and he was right there. That guy's good.
All right, Brian, ready to kill it, man? I'm ready to kill it. Make it happen.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you, Tim.
Talk to you later, brother.
All right.
Bye.